right, John, we're back for Roman numeral 3, section A of volume 1 of Hans Urs von Balthasar's 7-volume Theological Ascetics, book 1, Seeing the Form. With all that aside, we talked about last time how we're seeing the end of this volume in sight. I'm really excited because I actually went ahead and bought the next one because I'm ready for it. Not the least, as we were talking before hit record about, it's been a sad time in American public life, and this is maybe a nice respite. That said, I think we both agree that this was a difficult section. There are bits of it that I thought, like, great, we're here, we've got it. Like, oh, I don't get what's going on at all.
Yeah, that's right. In our last session, we discussed how we were hoping that this section perhaps might be a bit easier to read, particularly because, we had looked ahead and saw that, okay, he is directly dealing with aesthetics now. And we were right, he is dealing with aesthetics now. However, again, the language is challenging. I mean, we were just talking about how we had to read parts multiple times. Again, I don't know if this is a translation thing. Maybe I'm intellectually inferior to Balthasar, and I can't grasp what he's saying. I feel like that T.S. Eliot bit in I think it's the Four Quartets, where it's like the human mind can only grasp so much reality. I think the human mind can only grasp so much Hans Urs von Balthasar. You have to really wrestle with him.
That may be, and if it's just this idiosyncratic use of language, the edition of Heidegger's Being Time that I have, that probably most people have, where they traditionally leave in, or they explain it once, but then the rest of the time they say das Sein.
Right.
They leave in some German words and kind of after giving, like, here's what more or less he's saying. I wonder if this could have been helped by leaving in any sort of idiosyncratic uses, or even, not just English, but idiosyncratic uses where, you leave it in there to kind of show the difference and the uniqueness of how this word is being used. We've all seen in some philosophical texts, they put in the full French ressentiment,
right?
Because just putting resentment doesn't quite capture what's going on here. And thinking about assumptions, starting from the very beginning here, everything said to this point was intended to lead us to what now follows. And just, was there a thesis that I missed? Was there? And like, he goes on, I guess he goes like, for it, the subjective ability to experience finds the reason justification for its existence in an experienceable object, then without this object, that experiential ability can by no means be demonstrated in the reality, nor indeed. This is not a thesis statement.
No.
What is I actually saw this little bit here as almost a kind of proof, and not just for, not like Aristotle's proofs, which at their best are proofs for some omnipotent being. They're not proofs for a benevolent God, a Trinity. That this is moving towards a proof for a Trinity, but nonetheless, I do not feel that the previous 418 pages led up to that. Not that he didn't do proofs for God and arguments for God's existence, but no, it has not led up to whatever he is saying there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and again, so he takes us a bit more. Again, we got it really from the title here, the need for an objective form of revelation. So, it seems like he wants us to think about how to, again, properly conceive of God. Who is God? What is the right language for us to use when thinking about him. And
well, even just the need for an objective form of revelation. Have we been shown that there is such a need?
right, no, well, that's the thing. I mean, this was such, again, a sort of again, this text is a journey, I think. And again, not always clear on where it's going. I mean, something that did stand out to me was the section on. I'm just trying to find the page. He mentions that again. When we think about, again, God in the world, we have to be careful to describe it in such a way as to not sound pantheistic. So again, it seems like there were parts here where earlier, right, he's still attempting to challenge various views of God or language of God that we utilize. You know, he says, you know, again, thinking of God as the sort of ultimately free agent. You know, big takeaway here as well is that you know, the Trinity is God's fullest expression of the self, of his self, etc., to reality. And then again, what was interesting about that too is he used that to transition into talking about the artist and how the artists work.
And yeah, he sets up this mirroring, but in the end, you know, that God's creation, God's art, is so, and he does use create and invent a couple of times in ways that seem to suggest a distinction without ever making what the distinction is. You know, I was having notes like, you know, how are they different?
Right.
Just from God's perspective, but and while sort of making that comparison with the artist, which got me excited when I started reading that, but then I got horribly stuck on it, and
Right.
still I'm fairly sure I don't understand it. But it does seem that like he then puts down the R's as like it's not even real. It's as being mimetic in a way
Yes.
that God's creation is not, which I'm happy to acknowledge, but it begs the question of, you know, why was this brought in here? How does it advance, or what is it advancing?
Yeah, no, that's right. I thought that too. You know, again, the discussion on the artist seemed to be about, you know, again, like we were just talking about the act of creation, etc. But it's just there seemed to be an insufficiency that he was saying that exists within the artist. You know, let me just find the quote. Yeah, so on the top of 431 to 432, right? So quite, you know, that with works of art, we can debate whether an investigation that goes beyond the data of the work to busy itself with the person, the artist, his biography and psychology, contributes to the aesthetic understanding of the work, or on the contrary, detracts from it, seducing us from the contemplation of art into a consideration of other areas, for instance, sociology and cultural theory. This not least because we cannot assume that the work of art is intended in its author's mind simply to be an expression of himself. Quite the contrary, is more often the expression of a worldview which the artist proposes as objective and valid for others as well. It is this worldview and not himself that he wants to fashion and make worthy of belief. So, so again, I mean, yeah, is that true? Is there ideological art? Sure, absolutely. But again, it seems like there was a kind of dismissiveness there, the action of the artist.
Yeah, and for a book about aesthetics, not allowing for some sort of greater, deeper aesthetic value
Right.
within art. And on that same bit, on page 431, more towards the middle, I just highlight here, one can seek in various ways to come to know the intention and disposition of someone who express himself on a surface. Did you explain the difference, in your mind here between intention and disposition? One of those. I can see a difference. But he is positing something that I don't think he properly backed up. He's dropping terms in there. It's not important to the overall argument, but just kind of one of those things. And it does lead to the bit you highlighted of that this worldview that, and perhaps speaking as someone who considers himself a minor artist, we both write poetry. As well as various forms of what are now maybe called creative nonfiction. But maybe I took a bit of umbrage that is sort of the limit of what I can accomplish.
Yeah, no, especially because, again, art properly understood, I think, is looking at reality as it is. I mean, and again, to just imply that that's not entirely possible is strange. But I guess I still want to know, like, what does theological aesthetics mean? If we fully investigate, can we at this point in the text say what that means?
I don't think so, and I don't think this helps. And Spencer, we both really got excited. We started seeing art and artists being mentioned. Okay, there's going to be some meat here that'll really help us come to a more concrete, because purely divine examples can be hard to fully grasp. For me personally, that's why I feel the importance of the incarnation is. It's not just the salvation, but there is also our ability to really connect to God. Speaking as a parent, my favorite Bible passage will always be from the Transfiguration. Well, I think the same phrasing was actually used in another gospel with John the Baptist. But God saying, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. It's a beautiful moment. And it helped me understand God in a very powerful way as a father. I know, in a sense, I can't know the extent that God does, but I know what it feels like to love and be pleased in my child. To be pleased and a member of my family and a student, and so that helps me connect. And I wanted, I guess, maybe him to find that in an artist.
Well, I'm wondering, is it possible too that again, in the line about making the worldview known, there is a sense too that we as poets and writers, we do this because, again, we want to express reality in a certain way, but we want to be known. We want to have that feeling of known and of being known. And in some ways, like God does through our daily lives, he seeks for us to know him and to be known. So, perhaps that's how we could read that section. Maybe I'm misreading it. Because again, when we think of our work, right? And I don't mean this in an egotistical sense, but I want to write something. I want to put it out in the world. I want somebody to read it, and to have somebody to read it and talk to me and say, "Here's what this meant to me." Right? Like, my ideas are now known. My piece is known. If that makes
There's
sense.
Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It does bring back something we discussed last time, that I felt I saw some intimations of Bishop Barclay, whose empiricism was partly grounded, if I recall, on the idea that we exist because God sees us. That the question of do things still exist when I'm not looking? And that essentially because God is always looking.
Right.
And so there's maybe something of that can put in there. And just this section here where the artist comes up. A revelation as revelation in hiddenness. And then the subsection, in the revelation of being. And I'm just not sure that, I mean, you could argue the revelation of hiddenness because he does seem to imply that the artist is working, or at least perhaps a certain kind of didactic artist, or dogmatic, in a negative sense, is working purely on the surface. So maybe, it's a way of showing that there is something hidden, because of this being, or the difference between what they do and true revelation.
Right.
And then in the revelation, how is what he's describing the artist, how is that connected to revelation being? He seems to almost depict as the opposite revelation, or at best, and I'm going to dip into Plato here. Are these like the shadows on the cave wall? And I can't imagine he would be okay with that comparison, because I have through my notes here, more shots fired against Plato.
Right.
I am now firmly convinced, based upon what we've read so far, that he is not anti-Plato, but he is definitely setting out a defiantly not Platonic theology. That he is sort of rejecting the idea of this sort of Christian Platonist tradition.
That's right. I think it's a kind of, as we've picked up on, I think he's using Platonic language, but to either challenge or expand upon certain things. And again, I mean, I don't say this as a criticism at all, but like, I want to know, and again, maybe we'll get to this in this final section, these final 200 pages that we're reading. What is good art for Balthasar? What is bad art for Balthasar? When we think of our program, I thought some of the essays of T.S. Eliot that we read, I thought were very helpful in thinking about what is religious art. What does that mean? What does that look like? Who does it badly? Who does it well? So that's something I kind of want to see a bit more.
Yeah, that is always the question. And whenever one brings it up, one always gets a very pat answer regarding, what makes, sort of religious art good? What makes Christian art, Christian poetry, religious poetry good? And invariably you get like, well, it just has to be good art, good poetry, whatever. Like, that doesn't answer my question at all.
Right.
I got that. You didn't need to tell me that, that if my wonderfully orthodox poem is garbage, it's not a good religious poem. I didn't need to hear that. I want to know, what else needs to be there. And I do have confidence that Balthasar is going to give us something that we can apply to that. Maybe not here. I am going to bring us back a few pages to the bottom of 426, because I got my hobby horses. Towards the bottom, a similar distortion occurs when, on the basis of Platonic presuppositions, the world of matter is regarded as a concealment of the spiritual, and anything earthly is concealment of the heavenly. And when, in consequence, what in the gospel is truly the humiliation of God by his condescension to a human existence, is no longer given its proper place within the Christian mystery. But just that sort of like shots fired against, he explicitly says, that, this distortion is based upon Platonic presuppositions. I would actually say it's probably more Neoplatonic. There is like, well, no, actually, here it is Platonic. Earlier, he kind of railed against, I would say, Neoplatonism. But this is really arguing against the metaphor I just compared it to, the cave. You have the real world and you have the shadows on the wall that we see. And just like, no, this is the real world. But that then also brings up, this question of revelation. What is revelation? What is its purpose? What does it do? And what is its relation to ascetics?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm struck by this line that you mentioned too. Everything corporeal about Christ is simply regarded as an image that conceals, which stimulates us to seek and understand the spiritual element in Him, and both things together become an occasion and a springboard from which we soar to the divine. That seems, I read that as, I guess, dismissive almost. Is that, it seems like almost a kind of Gnostic thing that he's criticizing. Or maybe even like, I'm trying to think of that Walker Percy phrase, angelism. You remember that?
Or even, is it Pelagianism that has the two? If you're watching, that was my child. But is it Pelagianism that has like the two natures, or is that Arianism? That's Arianism that has like Christ was divine or was human, then became divine, and the natures weren't. There was the hypostatic union.
Right. Yeah.
That he's not arguing against that, because I think more or less we've resolved that. Just sort of as Christians, but he is pushing against using Christ in a way that ignores that earthly, like it's just about rising above and forgetting that earthly nature and the importance of that, because that is, he became part of creation,
right.
And I kind of read a bit of that in it, that we have our eyes aimed too high,
right,
and we forget to look down. Which again, maybe that does bring us to earthly ascetics.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I mean, I want to know what the takeaway is for the artist. And this is not, again, like I said, I want to reiterate, I'm not criticizing Balthasar here, but, not only T.S. Eliot, but Jacques Maritain, Etienne Gilson, all had serious books engaging theology, meant to think about the arts. So again, like I think, I'm not sure this is that anymore.
Yeah, he's on a different level. He is not writing about how, like Art and Scholasticism by Maritain, he's not writing about how to be a Christian writer, poet, or artist.
Right.
Going back to the use of language, skip a couple ahead from where we were to, let's see, is this? Oh, where did I find that here? I have notes that he talks about anime, animus.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that section.
Yeah, and it's like, what? Is this male, female? Is it what? It's like it's dropped in there and then walked away from. And it blew my mind of like, what in the name of all that is holy is the purpose of this? We got this bit of German idealism. Okay, yeah, so Anima begins to sing when she, okay, female, feels alone and thinks the animus, her noisy husband, has left the house. But poets and lovers know how to overhear Anima and induce her to sing. What? I mean, on its own, if you just took that out, I would go, oh, that is awesome. I love that. That's a wonderful metaphor and way to be thinking about art. In the context of this, it drove me completely insane.
Right.
I don't think he's set up well for this at all. And yeah, it just we're getting near the end, and I feel like I've had a bit of a letdown here so far.
Yeah. So I mean, again, we're gonna have to see where this goes. I'm again, perhaps this is something where you need to read every single volume to fully understand Balthasar. um, you know, but because I'm starting to get the sense that this is um, a well, I mean, we know it is, but this is a you know, the best comparison I guess I can think of, where it's like you know, people have the misconception that the Lord of the Rings trilogy is actually 3 books, but it's not. It's one book in 3 parts that was published separately. So I have a feeling that this is actually one massive thousand page book that was separated, perhaps, or just this kind of, you know, or maybe not. But again, he's continuing the same argument over multiple books. So essentially, it is one continuous work.
I hope so, and I think that when we talk again, we're going to have to revisit some of this section again. Obviously, we're not done with this objective evidence of revelation section, you know, or even like this bit we're on of it. But, and I've been down on it, but I do want to, you know, I love charting this non-Platonic course, and I love this I still love, you know, he has this sort of recapturing of the idea of gnosis, and the centering of and a very unique kind of revelation. You know, it's I can't quite define it. I'm not sure it's been defined for us, but it's not just, you know, the revelation of the incarnation. It is something. It's almost like a mystery cult,
Right.
in there, which may go as a rediscovery or reuse of the word gnosis, but not Gnostic.
That's right.
And I think that's all I have for what we read this section. We should probably say more, but it's been frustrating and it's been a difficult few weeks in the world.
Yeah.
What happened?
So, okay. Well, we will hopefully our intrepid viewers will join us again next time. I think for me, I'm going to reread this section to hopefully fully understand it, and then should we read the next 50 pages?
Yeah, I think to read the next 50 pages, have to reread
Yeah.
the 50 we just did, but that's it, it's all worthwhile. All right. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you,
And,
Christopher.
I'll see you soon.
Sounds good. See you soon.